A clip to play for Jason. People just tweet me stuff, and then dogs on a plane, or in this particular clip, it's Denzel Washington sort of talking about the family. But I'm curious in your take as a man of color. It comes from some poverty. What do you think of this clip? And we'll play it. Play the Denzel. Do you have the clip, Max Pata?
Yeah, so this is actually a montage of two different clips. We separated them. So first one is him talking to Black Tree TV in 2017.
The issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway in the
I
legal
think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, yeah, they're little yummies. I said, who? He said, little yummies. Look up, Google Lil Yummy. Lil Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father?
Yeah.
You know, like I did talk about my 3 closest friends, and they did, 15 to 25. One did 28, this and that. I was the only one of the 3 that had a father in my life, even though my parents were together.
All right.
But I still had a father.
They didn't have to sleep in the same room as your father, Jason Whitlock. But I've been yelling about this for a million years. Everyone just calls me a racist,
I think that, Denzel just said some things that have basically been illegalized to talk about publicly by black people. We're only allowed to talk about basically police brutality. If you stray from that narrative, you're going to be called a sellout, an Uncle Tom. You're celebrating white people or whatever. And so, listen, what Denzel said there is 1,000% factually accurate. I had a conversation a couple of months ago, or maybe a month ago, with Roland Martin, who's a political person on the left, and I just kept trying to say to him, I was like, hey, man, we can talk about political solutions, but if you put all the perfect policies in place and then you hand them to a group of people whose family is in shreds, it just won't make an impact or any difference. Everything, if you just understand the history of the planet, the history of cultures, the history of human development and evolution, it has to be built on a foundation of family structure. And, it's not an accident that it takes a man and a woman to create a kid. And it takes a man and a woman to properly develop a kid. And so even, take my parents' divorce when I was 5, and I think my brother was 8 years old. But both of my parents stayed very involved in both of our lives. And if that's not the case, if both parents aren't the case, and that goes on en masse, there will be aberrations. There will be the Barack Obamas that grandparents come in and fill the gap, and others come in and fill the gap. But if you, as a collective, if we as black people don't fix our family structure, there's just no positive future in place for us collectively. There will be some positive people individually, but of us moving forward en masse won't happen with our current family structure situation.
Well, it's a good way of putting it, which is moving forward en masse, because there's people who smoke their whole life, never get lung cancer, and die at 95. There's people who never put on a seatbelt, been in 3 car accidents, and never been injured. But statistically, for a group, you're looking for don't smoke and wear your seatbelt. And there's always going to be President Obama's and all versions of that in any group. But if you want to move and as a large group together, the family needs to – that's the foundation.
I've said it as simply as this, because we have a lot of conversation about police brutality. And I say that the first policeman of a human being should actually be mom and dad. Mm-hmm. That should be the first supervisor and policeman. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And so it's like I looked out at the riots that happened in Baltimore after Freddie Gray, and I saw all these young people out in the street, and I saw policemen out there dealing with them. And I kept asking myself, I was like, no, the first policeman should be mom and dad. And I just saw a lot of kids unsupervised parentally who can even go out in the streets and do those types of things. And it's very unfortunate. It's a sad time that we live in when the American media won't allow a conversation that we need to have in our community.
Well,
we won't even allow it.
They're calling for an honest dialogue about race every 15 minutes.
Yes, they're
one,
saying
though.
it.
I know.
But I don't think they really want an honest dialogue.
Well, who does this behoove? I mean, the great Damashek would always say, "To what end?" Like, I'm always like, why is everyone arguing with me all the time when I talk about family? How does it benefit them? How does it benefit the person that doesn't have that? What is the argument constantly? Like, why can't we just? It just seems this should transcend politics.
It should, but I think and again, I don't really participate in politics, but I do observe it and comment on it from time to time. I think there is a political movement in this country that wants government dependency, that wants the government to be the police of young people and children, and want people constantly dependent upon the government. And so if you take away the family structure, you do create people en masse that are more dependent upon the government.
Right. How's that been working for 50 years is my question. It's sort of the Hugo Chavez thing. It's sort of like, really? Socialism? Like, what is the example? Show me the examples where it ever works. If you get on the freeway here on Western and drive towards Sun Valley and watch the pothole-ridden, never-ending construction of the 5, that is what government does. To me, that's them. Would you want the people working on this stretch of the 5 fucking freeway raising your kids?
No.
That'd be the worst thing ever. I couldn't imagine a worse fate for my kids to have the same fucking numbnuts who are trying to build a stretch of 3 miles of freeway for the last 18 years and can't pull it off, and it's 10 times over budget, and it's a mess. Raising my kids? It seems like the worst plan ever.
It's a terrible plan, but I'll just say this. There have been people, when I look at the mainstream media, when I look at pop culture, and the message, I think, not just to black people, but it certainly is a strong message to black people, is that you're incapable of taking care of yourself. And so that's something that I reject, that I look at my parents. My father certainly rejected it. My mother certainly rejected it. And so it was instilled in me that just as a man, you must take care of yourself. That was instilled in me from my dad, from my mom, from my family structure. But I see a lot of messaging from pop culture from the media to people on the far left in our government that telling black people you can't take care of yourself. You're owed something here by this country. The country owes you to take care of you because, 150 years ago there was a terrible crime done to you. And I say to people all the time, I was like, hey, look, if someone takes a bat and breaks my leg, I can go to court and I can say, hey, look, man, this guy broke my leg, but I have to do the rehab. He can't do the rehabilitation for me. And so no matter how wrong the guy was that broke my leg, and we may charge him some penalty for having broken my leg, but if I'm not willing to do the rehabilitation, my leg will never work. And so I say that to us as black people, I don't deny that there was a crime done and that we've been placed behind the 8 ball because of some racism and some government policies or whatever. But it's incumbent upon us, if we want to recover from those things, we got to do the rehab.
Yeah, I think the initial government policies put you behind the 8 ball, and the current government policies are keeping you behind the 8 ball. Hold on, I got to sniff.
Well put.
There's a lot of truth to that. That the belief that the government can fix your problems is a major problem for us as black people.
Well, it drives me insane that the Gavin Newsoms of the world can sit where you're sitting and explain to me that half of black and brown people in California don't have access to checking accounts, and he gets to be the fucking hero in the conversation. That drives me nuts. First off, he's lying. Secondly, what does that even mean? I don't know what that means. Or if that is true, then the answer is let's get them focused on getting checking accounts. The notion that he gets to have this stuff fly out of his fucking mouth and then he somehow gets to be a hero when he goes back to the governor's mansion is insane. It drives me nuts.
Hey, I face the same frustration, but I just, for us as black people, we're at a very critical time. I believe. I'm as upset as you are with Gavin Newsom. As a journalist, I'm a trained journalist. That's where I made my bones. That's how I became known. I'm just disappointed with the media because the lies and the misinformation are so obvious, and our democracy, our republic was set up for, hey, give the people the truth, and then they'll make proper decisions. I don't believe that all of us en masse, all Americans, I don't believe we're being fed the truth. And I believe that as African Americans, we're being fed some really insidious lies stuffed down our throat.
Well, I want to tease it for a second. You know, my sort of version of this is if you only report white cops shooting black men and never report it when cops of any color shoot white men, and if that's the only one that makes the news, we've talked about this a few times, then anyone watching would just assume it's open season on black men. If you saw the shaver whatever video that I don't want to show because it'll make me throw up out of Arizona, you'll see a white guy being executed that didn't make the news.
I know the one you're talking about. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. Is this the guy on his knees?
Yes.
It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
It is. As I've said, Mark Garrigus, who also sits where you sit, a lot of range. We got Garrigus's ass and Newsom's ass, Whitlock's ass, all on the same stool. I've said anything else, nothing could be a worse cop shooting than this. It could only tie it because this guy is executed with a semi-automatic
and they played games
gun.
With him. Put your hands down, lay down,
right.
stand up.
He was executed. He was executed, and while many cop shootings are bad cop shootings, this is probably the worst ever. Never made the news, never shown. Flies in the face of the narrative. So sometimes you can lie to people by giving them the story, and sometimes you can lie to them by not giving them the story. I believe if you're in the business of reporting bad cop shootings, this is at the top of the news. If you're in the business of reporting bad cop shootings only against black men, then it's not going to make the news. But that's a weird position as a news outlet. It wasn't on Fox or CNN. It wasn't on any. It didn't make any of the outlets, as far as I know.
You get what you pay for, Adam. And I believe most of what we see in the news is purchased. And so that type of news isn't being purchased, so no one's selling it or promoting it.
Well, give me we circle back to the lie that's being perpetrated. Well, what are you accusing the news of? Do you have something specific? Or specific topics?
I mean, clearly we were talking about one. Look, the police here's how I've explained police shootings, and this is where I believe the media is lying. If you understand the way our country's set up, most things revolve around money. And so with the police shootings, and keep in mind, I've had a member of my family killed by police, electrocuted in the streets with a taser in the rain. In my family, we believe it was a wrongful action by sheriff's department people. police have a different story or whatever.
Who was this member?
Cousin of mine, Anton Butler. I helped raise him. I certainly paid for his funeral. His mother is my first cousin, grew up with her like a sister, known this kid from out of the womb all the way through. He got killed at 26. So I'm not unsympathetic to this issue because it is a painful experience for your entire family. But, and this next comment is removed from my family. There has been no settlement. But when these police shootings happen, there is a government settlement generally for millions of dollars for the family. And the government doesn't like surrendering money, millions of dollars to citizens. The government is already motivated to stop police brutality. The government, if anything, wants people politely taken to jail and to serve this mass incarceration thing that we've figured out a way to make money on incarcerating people. The government has no interest, none, in killing anyone because it costs them money. They settle with these families for millions of dollars. The media knows this. And so all of this protest about police brutality to get the government to be against police brutality, the government's already against it. It's because it's a financial loser for them. Escorting people politely to jail, they can make money off of that. And so there is no epidemic of the police killing black men, particularly inappropriately. Even if you just took the numbers that they killed, that's not an epidemic. But to be killed inappropriately while unarmed, there's a better chance of being struck by lightning. A better chance being struck by lightning. And the media knows this. And they're lying to the public and lying to us as black people, playing with our emotions to have us have this animosity towards our country, to adopt a negative mindset. You can't accomplish great things if your mindset is negative. If you wake up every day thinking this country's out to get me and I have no opportunity here, you can't accomplish great things. You can only accomplish great things if you wake up every day like, holy cow, can I make something happen today? And that is the truth of America, whether we like it or not. I was in a one-bedroom apartment in the hood, me and my father flat-ass broke. I now live in one of the richest zip codes on the planet. That story for black people, show me these other countries where you can consistently tell that story, where there's that kind of opportunity, that kind of George Jefferson journey for black people. They just don't have it in other countries. And so that's the mindset I embraced as a young person that my father told me, even when we were flat on our ass. My father, no, we're going to be all right because I'm going to get up every day and go to work, and I'm going to eventually create another opportunity for myself. And he did. And my mother went to a factory job every day for 30 years and worked overtime and took second jobs. And she has two sons, me and my brother, both college educated, both financially responsible and taking care of ourselves, both have ascended higher than both of our parents. That's possible here in America, and there is no other country that all these people throwing tantrums and burning buildings, they can't point to some other country and say, oh, there's more opportunity over here. America's fucked up. They can't do that.
I love that. And it's funny because these guys will back me up. I've always talked about the government. I've said it a million times. They're not good. They're not bad. They're greedy. Mm-hmm. Right. They're greedy. They're into collecting money.
Yes.
You go down Forest Lawn Drive, they drive right past all the illegals selling flowers, and then they pull over the mom in the minivan who's going 5 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. There's literally a cop who sits up in the Jewish mortuary in the back, up the driveway. He's backed up the cop. He's on a motorcycle. Across the street from him is people who are in this country illegally selling flowers and just getting in a full cash market, not paying taxes. But going past him is somebody going 8 miles an hour faster than the posted speed limit, and they pull that person over. One person has money. They can get that money from that person. But you can say like, oh, it's good or bad. It's right. No, it's how everyone eventually goes. The government is one big business, and they've realized that we could go bust the guy across the street, that guy's an empty bag. He's got nothing for us. The mamas in the minivan, they got checking accounts, they got insurance, they're fine. We'll get the money from them. And so they start being magically sort of attracted to where the money is. So if you take a look at incarceration versus paying out settlements, one's a money drain and the other adds to the coffer. So I never looked at it that way, but in my grand scheme of the government just being not good or evil, but greedy, that dovetails nicely into that.
The government that we get out there and protest, just as we've just said, they lose millions of dollars in these settlements. They don't want it to happen. And yes, there are some tragic incidences where police do inappropriate things and or make mistakes. And I get it. They're painful. I've lived that experience. But to sit here and demonize the entire police force when I have several friends that are in law enforcement and to demonize a group of people in law enforcement who aren't really paid a lot of money. They're just trying to make it home and take care of their bills, too, and we're demonizing them when we, as African Americans in a lot of our communities, we're dependent on them and calling on them constantly to come fix problems that are going on in our communities, and now we want to turn around and demonize them. It's crazy. And again, as upset as you get with politicians and individuals, I get upset with the media because so much of this is so simple and easily explained. And I still believe in people that if you explain to them the truth, they'll make better decisions.